Hey, onesies, Josh Williams here, and thanks for checking out this week's episode of the One Man Podcast. It's always free and available on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play Music, and many more, as well as on the web at onemanpodcast.com. So please, whatever platform you're listening on, like and subscribe. While you're at it, give it a rating, leave a review. Why? Because it helps the podcast, and I'd really appreciate it. How about that? What about social media? Search One Man Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube to keep up with what's going on there, get a little extra content for yourself. And finally, to get in touch, please send your emails to contact@onemanpodcast.com. You send it, I read it on the podcast. That's the deal. Thanks for listening, guys, and I hope you enjoy this week's episode.
Hi, this is Rick Mercer. You're listening to the One Man Podcast.
Yeah!
Hey, it's Josh Williams here, and welcome to the One Man Podcast, episode number 104 for Wednesday, May 8th, 2019. How's it going, onesies? How has your week been? Listen, this episode, some things may have transpired by the time that you guys get this. I'm actually recording this on Sunday night, so before we get right into the thick of things, I need you to know that I'm recording this a few days early because I got something going on, which I'll tell you about later on in the episode. I'll be telling you about all sorts of things, though, so just a heads up, this is me reflecting on a shorter week, because I still got a couple big days I haven't lived yet since the time that this has been recorded and the time that it makes it to your ears. Hopefully, my voice is a nice, warm, buttery sorbet over your eardrums, nice and calm, not shrill by any means. And that's what happens when I don't turn off the, that's me, guys. Nice, eloquently said speech, literally going, not like a shrill sound, boodling. Yeah, I'm going to have to go ahead and put this thing on airplane mode. Or whatever the hell it is. I turn the Wi-Fi off. All right, so onesies, we got a week to talk about here. I'm sitting here Sunday night. I'm getting ready for a trip. I'm sipping on a nice little glass of a fine bourbon. I tell you who they are, but you know what? They don't pay to advertise on the show, so fuck them. I will simply enjoy this and, maybe you can tell by the way it sounds as I'm slurping it. The level of burn that comes in the exhale, the afterwards. Can you tell what it is by the sound? You shouldn't be able to. No one can. I had a fun week. Did I? I actually didn't have the best week. But, hey, we're all just out there trying to do our thing, live our lives. This week, I got a fun announcement to tell you guys. I'll wait for that. I'll tell you the other stuff first. I was doing a new LCBO activation, which just finished today, thank goodness. I went to go see Endgame again. This time I went with Jason and Simon. They were interested in going to see it, and we lost power at the house, and I figured, you know what? Fuck it, let's go. So I'll tell you all about that. And I got my new windshield. That's it. Not a whole heck of a lot went on this week, guys. I worked. And I did taxes. but who cares? They didn't get finished. I just did a lot of work on taxes. So getting right into it. I got my new windshield installed right after the podcast. You guys actually heard the last podcast was in the car on my way to pick up my vehicle. So new windshield in my vehicle. Very, very happy. And then today I heard a big snap sound again. But luckily I don't see any damage to the windshield. So more stones flying all over the place. In fact, on the same highway. So I think I'm just going to boycott an entire highway till it's not a goddamn asteroid field for fucking cars. Has anybody else had any damage this year just from like the extremely long winter, or any of my people in Ottawa with all the construction? Anybody anywhere? I don't really care. But are you just noticing that there's like a shitload of damage happening in one particular area? For me, it's my windshield is definitely taking a shit kicking on the 417 in Ottawa. So what all can this fella tell you about his week? That's even the slightest bit interesting. All right, I'll try to make it mildly. I want this one to be short, guys. I'm so exhausted right now. I had so many things to do today to get ready for this thing. Going on my trip tomorrow, and I needed to, pack and ship back a bunch of shit from this program. I may as well just get into it nice and easy. I am doing this LCBO thing again. We're just basically getting people to sign up for their newsletter. Okay, for anyone outside of Ontario, that's the liquor board here. We buy our liquor from a liquor board, from liquor stores, that kind of thing, but they're all under one umbrella. And of course, we're getting them to sign up for the newsletter. Simple enough gig, right? That's what I do. And it's not been too bad. But I've had some issues with colleagues just in terms of travel. I've been doing a lot of picking up people and dropping off people. It's been a giant headache. It's not the end of the world. My colleagues are nice people. It's just bothersome to me. It ends up being, instead of just going to my job, I'm trying to figure out, well, okay, where can we meet each other? Maybe it sounds stupid. I don't know. But I do know that some people listening to this podcast are very familiar with a concept and a thing called decision fatigue. You know what I mean? And you're just constantly all day making decisions. Okay, let's pick this. Let's do this. All right, let's do that. Okay, let's decide this. All right, this is going to be that. Okay, we'll do this way. Okay, why don't we do this way? And just the amount of things start to pile up and you're just like, okay, no more deciding and choices and just like, I'm spent. Somebody just tell me what you want me to do and I'll fucking do it. So I had a bit of that with the colleagues this week. Just in terms of picking people up and it's like, okay, where can you bring me? I can bring you here. Well, would you be able to bring me here? Not really. Okay. Well, what about here? I'm like, look, I can fucking bring you here. All right. Anyways, it's really not as bad as it sounds. It's the weekend has caught up with me. All right. Like I'm borderline considering trashing everything I've recorded up to this point, but I'm not gonna, this is my life. This is everyone, whoever wants to, their opportunity to sort of get to know me and where I'm at, week by week. And right now, Sunday night at the end of this big, long 4-day, program I've done, I'm a little toast. I'm burnt out. I've actually been really sleepy lately, like going to bed, earlier and actually sleeping in, to the last possible minute in the mornings. And, we're not talking going to bed at like midnight and getting up at 7 or 8. I'm talking like going to bed at like 10, 11, waking up at 10, 11. So I keep saying I feel like I'm depressed, but I don't quite know what it is. I think it's just things are a little hectic right now. But again, I have an announcement that kind of doesn't really resolve anything, but at least it lets you guys know where something's at. I went to see, after one of the LCBO shifts, I went to go see Endgame with Jason and Simon. We went out for a Chinese dinner. There's no power in the house. I came home, there's no power. So I think Jason had been watching some of the Marvel movies on Netflix, and he was missing ones. He's like, "What does this mean in that?" And I'm like, "Well, this was in this movie." Did you see that one? And he goes, "No." And I'm like, "All right, well, I got that." So I brought it. And there was like a whole day where Jay was basically just marathoning Marvel movies. So that was kind of funny. And then he was all about seeing Endgame. And Jason, here's the thing, I'd love to tell you guys about what Jay thought of the movie, but it would spoil things. So if you give a fuck at all about spoilers for this movie, get off your ass and go see it. It's like the biggest movie ever made. So I don't know what the fuck you're waiting for. But, now again, that's not fair because some of you have lives. I get that. But just for fuck's sakes, if it's big enough that you're listening to my podcast and you don't want spoilers, go see it. So no spoilers this week. I'm going to talk about it soon, though. I think I'm going to give you guys a month, and then that's it. I'm going to talk about it. So I saw it for the second time because I thoroughly enjoyed it the first time. I still thoroughly enjoyed it the second time. I got to watch things on a little bit lower, deeper level because I sort of know what's happening and whatnot. Still a great movie. Avengers Endgame. All right. Everyone in the house has seen it now. We can talk amongst it here. I did the LCBO activation. What else have I got going on? You know what? I went to spend Friday night with my buddy Mika. And I haven't seen Mika in a while. It was funny. We got together after one of the LCBO shifts, and I was talking about the last week's episode because Mika knows my mom very well. And if you guys listen to last week's episode, you heard a lot of disgusting conversations that I had with my mom. Mika was just like, yeah, I was listening. And as soon as your mother said the word sticky, I was like, fuck this, skipping forward, whatever. So I thought that was funny, but I got to spend an evening with him and his lovely wife, Mel. We played a couple board games. Here's the thing. I was just so beat. Like normally I'd be like, yay, let's play some board games. I haven't done that in a while. And, especially at night after a long day, I gotta say, I didn't have the energy. I didn't have the goddamn energy. Showed up and it was just like, I sat down, poured myself a glass of wine, and I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with just sitting here and chatting all night. But we played some games. They just went kind of slow. It was a good time. It was nice catching up. I haven't seen my friends in a while. Mika's lovely wife, Mel. Good times. Thank you for having me over. They did a bunch of work in their basement and stuff and renovated everything. So they're showing me that. It's kind of cool. And, I got home at like, I think 2:00 in the morning. I was there for quite some time. And then I drove back. They live outside the city. Is any of this interesting to you guys? Probably not. I'm trying to make this mildly interesting. It really, this is just one of those weeks, guys, where I really didn't do much. So there's not a lot to report, but I will tell you this. This is the thing, we're not even 10 minutes into the podcast. I'm already like, all right, I got one more thing and then I'll move on to the fucking end of the episode. I got a call from Air Canada. I was on the phone with Crystal. I was chatting, and I get a phone call. Pops up, says Air Canada calling. I was like, oh shit. I go, let me call you back. Air Canada's calling. So they called me up and said, hey, Josh, we were, I'm calling from yada, 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 just about the station attendant position, blah, 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 blah. Just wondering if you're still interested in it. I go, yeah, I'm still interested. Are you guys still interested in me? It's been several weeks. I didn't give her shit or anything, but I'm like, I haven't heard from you guys. Well, are you still interested in me? And she's like, oh, yeah, no, we just wanted to call and ask you a few more questions. I was like, okay. She's like, are you a valid Canadian citizen? Are you this? Like, these are all questions that were on the application, by the way. So I've already answered these questions. And I was like, yep. And like, okay, well, if that's the case, we'd like to offer you the position of station attendant, yada, yada, yada. I was like, oh, great. Did I not turn that off? Fuck's sakes. Oh, this is just me bitching and complaining. Whatever. You know where the pause and stop buttons are. You can leave at any time. But I'm almost done talking about last week, huh? Oh, we just passed the 10-minute mark. It looks like it's not going to be the shortest podcast ever. So, yeah, they offered me the job. I don't even start until like the middle of June, which sucks. I think that's part of my stress and my frustration right now, gang, is that I'm just like, you know what? I got a month and a half with no real work on my calendar. Can't really book a whole heck of a lot because I got a new job starting. That was the thing too. They were like, can you, commit to, once you start the training, you have to have every day for 6 weeks completely available, with no exceptions. Is that a thing? I'm like, yeah, sure. But it's 2 to 6 weeks. Like you can't narrow it down any more than that. I can't, like, if it's 2 weeks, but over the next couple months, I have to like make sure I don't book anything for 6 weeks. Because they told me like on June 10th, I'll get my schedule. But it's like, if you're batting work away for those subsequent 4 weeks afterwards, and then just like, we just need you for 2. I'm like, all right, well, that's whatever. You know what? You guys don't tune into this podcast to listen to the nitty gritty ins and outs of this stuff. But it's just, I'm stressed out right now because I've actually had, there was another big activation that I was looking at doing for them, for Karma. And they just didn't tell me that the company had started contacting someone else. So I basically was blocking this like most of May, half of June for them. And then that would have, just been right up to the Air Canada part, starting Air Canada. So, finding that out, it's like, okay, great. But like a lot of the other stuff from these companies that I work for May has already been snatched up. So it was kind of like, I was hitching my wagon to that. Well, anyways, so, Blabbity bloobity bleebity. I will be a station attendant at Air Canada, assuming I pass all their courses and stuff like that. So it's an interesting little thing. I'm excited for the benefits. The job itself sucks. Sounds like it fucking sucks. I probably told you guys when I applied for it, it's minimum wage. It is the worst conditions. They're like, are you prepared to work any hour of the day, overnights, early mornings, blah, blah, blah? Yep. Are you good to work in negative 40 degrees weather and plus 40 degrees weather? Yep. Are you good to crawl around in small spaces, confined and then twisting and things like that? Yep. Are you good to be lifting bags that are over 70 pounds on a consistent, regular basis? Yep. Are you prepared to work for that for $14? I was like, oh, yes. This is all garbage. So nothing about that particular part of the job sounds good. However, the travel benefits are amazing. There's regular benefits. There's profit sharing. There's all these things that I read in the letter. So a lot of good stuff that you do get from it. And once I get my foot in the door, hopefully I can move around somewhere that's a little more to my liking. But the way I'm looking at it right now, the perspective that I'm looking at, because it's only like 20 to 30 hours a week too. It's not full-time. It's part-time. So it doesn't really get in the way of comedy or anything like that. Oh, that's a Bonnie bourbon. I'm just looking at this whole thing like it's going to be a gym membership that pays me. So I'm going to do these shifts. I'm going to get a workout. I'm going to try to make sure that I'm lifting with my knees and all that crap. So I'm not breaking myself. And then, and then reap the rewards once I pass my, my 6 months or whatever. So that's it. I'm trying to do something that maybe will help support comedy. Because at this point, right, if it doesn't support comedy, you can get the fuck out. So that was last week. It was a lot of boring ass work, boring shifts, taxes, And I'll spare you. So if you've been bored up until this point, guess what? It's over mercifully. Yeah. How about that, huh? Right onto the sponsors. Nice and quick. My partners at portablepress.com. Uncle Johannes's Bathroom Reader. Last week I read you guys an article called Made a Fortune. Well, I have its mirror image, The Lost a Fortune, from Uncle John's Unstoppable Bathroom Reader. All right, this article is called Lost a Fortune. Like the celebrities on the opposite page, these people came from humble beginnings, but we think what happened to them after they made their fortunes is much more interesting. Willie Nelson, from riches. By 1988, Willie Nelson had been a country music star for nearly 20 years and had 2 multiple platinum albums under his belt. To rags. Due to years of creative accounting in 1990, Nelson owed the IRS $16.7 million. To pay it, he had to auction off just about everything he owned. That's sad. MC Hammer. They do what they want to do, say what they want to say, live how they want to live, play how they play. Right? MC Hammer from the Addams Family. Addams Family. From Riches, You Can't Touch This, released in 1990, became a pop phenomenon, making Hammer an overnight superstar. A world tour and endorsement deals with Pepsi and KFC followed. Oh man, match made in heaven. KFC and Pepsi. To rags, Hammer went on a $30 million spending spree that included mansions and a $500,000 a month payroll. After 2 mediocre follow-up albums and some poor investments, Hammer declared bankruptcy in 1996, more than $13 million in debt. Whoa! Nikolai Tesla, from riches. In his heyday in the 1890s, Tesla was a rich and famous inventor and held more than 700 patents. He is best known for developing alternative currents, AC electricity. Sorry, alternating current. Now that I don't have the aligners in all the time, like my mouth makes a tremendous amount of saliva when I take my teeth out. Or my aligners, I should say. Developing alternating current AC electricity. To rags, he was also naive. Thomas Edison, who saw Tesla as competition, did all he could to undermine Tesla's work. It worked. A series of patent lawsuits left Tesla with no money or credit despite his many inventions. He died broke in 1943. That's not cool. Finally, Mike Tyson. That is not my Michael Tyson impression. That was just the Michael Tyson. Jesus. That's my impression of someone very excitedly saying Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson. From riches, the youngest heavyweight champion in boxing history had earned $300 million. To rags, by 2003, it was all gone. Tyson blames his former promoter, Don King, for mismanaging his earnings. King claims that Tyson blew the money himself. The two will duke it out in court. 2003. Oh, is that when this book is? 16? Let's see what the copyright date is. It says the two will duke it out. Of course, at this point, anyone listening who gave a shit about that probably already knows what happened. This was, copyright 2001, it says? No, that's a different thing. Nobody gives a shit. I just want to know exactly. Yeah, there you go. Copyright 2003. So this is talking about it 2003. There you go. All right. Well, that was To Riches. Running feet at the bottom. Willie Nelson's first gig, playing guitar in a polka band. And that, my friends, is Uncle John's Unstoppable Bathroom Reader. From my partners at portablepress.com. Check out all the different books that they have. They got something that's right up your alley, no doubt. Unless your alley is not, learning and broadening your horizons. Maybe you're just an idiot who sits around with their thumb and, in an orifice. You could pick which one. Just going, I know everything I need to know. Put on the TV shows for me. All right. Who else do I have on this list? This is really just this is the Phone It In podcast. This should have been the one I did with the handheld microphone. I'm just not feeling it this week, guys. You know that next week is the 2-year anniversary of this podcast. I've been doing this for 2 years. I've only ever had an episode late once, which is not bad, I don't know. Again, I'm still trying to get the consensus from you guys. I had a very small episode for you on time. It was just letting you know that in terms of everything I wanted to tell you, I was too sick to do it. So I don't know. Did I drop the ball? You tell me. But besides that, this episode is just kind of I really don't have anything to talk about. I didn't even watch any movies or anything like that I could be like, you know what? I saw this and this was pretty cool. Not a whole lot of anything. I rewatched some movies. I watched Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle, and that surprisingly was a really good movie. I thoroughly enjoyed that movie. Excuse me. What else have I got going on here? Oh, yes, I'm still talking about sponsors. Well, I've got dates on the calendar for Absolute Comedy. I will be at Absolute Comedy Toronto for 2 weeks straight in August. And of course, my home club here in Ottawa, I'll be hosting for my buddy Paul Verzi in November. And in the meantime, you guys can check out all sorts of great shows, absolutecomedy.ca. Absolute Comedy is the best live stand-up comedy from across North America, with locations in Kingston, Toronto, and Ottawa, Ontario. These comedians have been featured on Just for Laughs, Netflix, Comedy Central, CBC's The Debaters, Jimmy Kimmel Live, Conan, The Comedy Network, and much, much more. Go to absolutecomedy.ca to see this week's lineup. Planning a night out is easy with dinner and show packages available at all locations. Live comedy is a great choice if you're organizing a celebration, fundraiser, company outing, or corporate event. Want the show brought to you? They'll send comedians to your venue with performances tailored to your event, creating a night of laughs your guests will love and won't soon forget. So for showtimes, ticket prices, gift certificates, special shows, and more, head to absolutecomedy.ca. Again, that's absolutecomedy.ca for the best live stand-up comedy from across North America. And we're back. And did I forget anybody? No, I did not forget anybody, but I did not have time. My partner's at DK Dorling Kindersley, the DK Books guys. They're amazing. DK.com/CA in Canada, DK.com in the States, of course. I mentioned it last week. I actually had it it's funny. I had the book set aside to continue reading this evening, and I'm actually getting pretty close to finished. The issue, I'm doing it 2 days early. So I'm like, again, I can sit and read them all night, but I need to get this podcast recorded because I'm driving to New York. So again, next week I will have a double dose of reviews for you from the two books in the same sort of genre. So it'll be that. So like I said, I mean, I'm going on a trip tomorrow, guys. So coming up this week, I leave, basically as soon as I'm done this podcast, I'm going to start, mixing it down, doing all the post-production and start packing. I'm going to New York City for a couple of days. My roommate Simon. So I told you guys that Simon bailed. Well, now Simon's back in, but he's coming just for the one day, and then he's leaving tomorrow after Tuesday afternoon. But anyway, so Mikey is coming over at some point this evening. I actually thought he'd be here by now, but Mikey's not here. He'll be showing up. I got to pack just a small bag because it's only for 2 nights, and then we're leaving. First bells tomorrow. I think we're going to try to leave, but, at 7 o'clock in the morning gives us time to drive down there, a little bit of time to stretch out at the Airbnb, maybe have a shower change. And then tomorrow night, Monday night, that'll of course be 2 days ago by the time you guys hear this. We're checking out Paul's 400th podcast episode. It's being recorded live audience at Gotham Comedy Club on Manhattan Island. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to that. Get to hang out with my pal. I haven't seen him in a long time. What else? And then Tuesday, it's Mike, Simon, and myself. Simon is only with us for the first half of the day, but Mikey and I have the whole day to spend in New York. We have planned 0 things to do so far. We're thinking of checking out a comedy show or something, but in terms of just what are we going to do, we're in New York City and we got nothing planned. I think that's kind of cool. I'm actually, the amount of trips I planned that I've overbooked things to do. This one's going to be kind of nice. We're actually planning on, Simon is a big fan of Sonic. So when we drive down tomorrow, we're going to stop in Syracuse and have some Sonic for breakfast. You guys know me in Costco. There's a Costco in Syracuse that I want to check out and just see what kind of cool shit. When Mikey and I were in LA, all the wicked things that they have in American Costcos that we don't have here. Oh, I'm looking forward to seeing that because that's going to be spectacular. Absolutely cannot wait. And, so it's going to be a fun trip on the way down. Get to have American donuts, huh? Where they just don't give a fuck about health at all. Like, I am so off the wagon with giving a shit about my health just this last little bit. I've had so many goddamn cravings. I don't know if I'm diabetic or what. I'm going to be a good bitch, though. I really am going to be a good bitch on this trip. I'm looking forward to just having some decent meals. Again, with the fact that I have to take my teeth out and brush them and all that stuff every time I have anything, even coffee, it's going to really kibosh how often I feel like doing that. So that's a good thing. Every time you cross the border into the States, you're like, oh, fat fuck land, where the streets are paved with peanut brittle. Like everything is just caloric as hell. Even if you have have you had a cheeseburger in the States? They're good, but the meat has got way more fat in it. Like those big, I mean, maybe my people listening in the States, they're just like, I don't get it. It doesn't seem like that's what you're used to. When you come up to Canada where like our beef and everything is lean, you're getting that kind of shit in the States. You know what I mean? Like you get the big balls of fat in the burger. Still delicious, just the meat's not lean. It's like they use regular hamburger instead of lean hamburger. I don't know if anyone else has found that. And I want to give a shout out, by the way, to my listeners in the States. Florida was huge last month for downloads. California was fantastic last month. I really appreciate that. Michigan and Mississippi. Hey, thank you for listening to the podcast. And I also want to give a big shout out to Nova Scotia here in Canada. Nova Scotia has been a great source of downloads. Alberta, although I'm pretty sure who I know in Alberta, who's doing all the downloading in Alberta. Yeah, Nova Scotia, second highest province. Fucking no. Quebec's right next to me. I got lots of friends in Montreal, everything like that. But whatever's going on in Nova Scotia, I just want to say thank you guys for listening to the One Man Podcast. I definitely appreciate it. I actually have a feeling that the Florida downloads are from my buddy Mark, regular listener, who I know was visiting some family down there at one point. So I feel like those downloads are him specifically, but get downloads all over the place, big numbers. And I just, I wanted to say thank you to all of you guys listening. If you want to send any emails in, I'd appreciate that. Contact at onemanpodcast.com. Mikey and I, we're coming back on Wednesday morning because I have a rosé tasting thing. I'm doing yet another LCBO event, but it's different this time. I'm going to be in a store promoting rosé wines for Mother's Day. So getting the mom some roses and some rosé wine. I got to be back my Wednesday evening to do a tasting for that. So I'm looking forward to, I'm looking forward to coming back and getting some free wine. I hope I get paid for the time too, because I think I'm actually going to reach out to my person and say, hey, like, am I leaving half a day early in New York to come back to just drink wine? Cause, I want money too. You better fucking pay me on top. Anyways. What else are we doing? So yeah, I've got that event coming up. Sunday is Mother's Day. Will you guys do anything fun for your moms? You got a special lady in your life that you want to, respect and recognize. I got lots of moms in my life. All my best friends, lovely ladies, are all mothers now. So happy Mother's Day to all of them. I'll be wishing them that next week. That's it. I got a few days in New York, so I'll have actual interesting content for you next week. I hope. It's always a hope. You never know. This goddamn life we live, right? It's always a goddamn gong show, So I'm looking forward to, you know what, too? If you guys hear this, actually, you know what? By the time you guys hear it, it'll be too late. That was the big thing, too, for the record. Because a few people asked me, like, why don't you just take your gear down and record the podcast? I'm like, well, A, I don't want to pack all the gear up and bring it down. Secondly, I don't want to spend time in New York just sitting around recording a podcast. Like the week in LA, that was great. We got one opportunity to record the podcast. That was absolutely fine. Had a great time. Mikey enjoyed it too. But in terms of this trip, man, I don't want to spend 2-3 hours, of New York if I have one day there sitting and recording a podcast. And at that point, we still wouldn't have done anything yet either, right? I have to record it on Tuesday. That's our one day there. So I'm giving it to you now. I'll have the stories to you next week. All right. Thank you guys for being caught up with me. What did I do last week? Nothing interesting. What am I doing this week? Hopefully lots of interesting. So I'll tell you guys all about that. And I got an email this week. I got an email from someone I am not familiar with. I got an email from Kaushal. I hope I pronounced that properly. Kaushal. Kaushal. Kaushal said, "Hello, sir. I've been watching your podcast on YouTube from a past couple of days. And I really appreciate the hard work." And I hope he doesn't. This episode will definitely let you know that I do not work hard. That you put in to make those podcasts. I am looking forward to starting my own podcast where I can share my views with people. What advice will you give to a newbie in this field? I have a few questions for you. Well, I guess I'll just go with your questions and I'll give you whatever advice I can think of. So number one, how can I make an intro for my podcast? Well, I don't know if you're referring to a musical intro. I swirled my bourbon so much I spilled it on my hand. One sec. Scatting to make the time go by. Hey. So yeah, I don't know if you're referring to my intro, where I talk about subscribing and, leaving a rating and all that stuff. That was actually just Kamar, my roommate, has suggested many times leaving something like that. And then with his podcast, the Joe Rogan Experience, he had made one nice and clear and concise. And I figured rather than just saying the name of the email over and over again, drabbling on at the end of the podcast to subscribe and all that shit, just put together a nice little one, save it as a file, and then you can just drop it into the beginning of the podcast. That's what I do. In terms of intro music, 'cause I think number 2 is where can I get the music for my podcast intro? Well, I got lucky with my podcast intro because, the intro that my podcast has, the song is Show Me Yours by Monkey Junk. They're a Canadian blues band, and I went to school with the guy who was in that band. So they've actually won multiple Junos. Amazing blues rock band. The frontman Steve Mariner went to school with me. He tours and opens and plays with such high profile musicians. But I got very lucky that I reached out to him and I asked him if he would be willing to let me use Show Me Yours as my intro. And he said yes. And I actually have a version of it that's more instrumental. So he sings. If you listen to Show Me Yours on Apple Music or Spotify or whatever, it's almost vocal almost immediately after that first dun dun da 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 da. He starts singing right away. I have their tech version that doesn't have the vocals. So I was able to take that and just to be able to use the riff from that. So it was very, very kind of him and the band to let me use that for the podcast. I'm still very, very grateful for that. Earlier episodes, you would actually get to hear a sample of the song from sort of like the bridge to the end, with Steve singing and everything like that. So again, I recommend anybody to check out Monkey Junk. They're absolutely fantastic. Multiple, they're a Juno award winning. Juno is the Canadian Grammys. So for what it's worth, these guys are fantastic. They're an exceptional world traveling award winning band. So to be honest with you, I couldn't really tell you how you can get intro music. I know that there's stuff that you can find online that's like royalty free or whatever. That's why when you're watching YouTube videos, you'll sometimes hear a lot of the same music because people are using the same sort of bank of royalty free music. I got lucky in that I actually knew a band and got their okay and their permission, even from the label. Like I had to get the written consent from the label. And I actually, believe it or not, have a shit ton of issues posting anything on YouTube or on Facebook or anything like that. When I post episodes, they're always like, this music belongs to someone else. And I have to like argue it and fight it and send an email and say I have the license. And then the next week when the next episode comes out, the same thing happens again. So, to be honest with you, YouTube is not my ideal place for people to listen to the podcast, but I'm grateful for anyone who's listening from anywhere. So, not to take forever to answer your honest question, but I would suggest looking for some royalty free stuff, maybe Google it or whatever. Because otherwise you could end up getting, in trouble using someone else's music, without their permission. So yeah. What else? Do you prepare a script before recording the show? No, I don't. You said, how can someone maintain the flow throughout the podcast? I don't think I do. I don't have a script. I am a stand-up comedian, so I talk for a living, but it's tough, man. I would need, sorry, I couldn't tell you that you should have a script beforehand because, depending on what you want to talk about, what I would say is maybe make some notes. Like I try to make notes. I have a template that I use that I put all my notes in. I talk, different sections about what I've got, what I did last week, what I got coming up this week, certain talking points that I want to make sure I don't forget. I've got it organized for the sponsors and stuff. So it really depends on what your podcast is going to be about, but I would suggest make notes of what you want to talk about and then just, be honest, go with the flow. If you're like me where you just have one person talking, you're definitely going to want to have some sort of structure. If you can script out or make Cole's notes, bullet points of what you want to talk about, that would be great. For myself, I find it easier to just write down sort of, what I did last week and the different dates of the week and just kind of decide what I want to talk about and what I don't. Yeah, this is a bad example this week because really there wasn't a whole heck of a lot for me to have done, so, another interesting thing too is that I had a pretty good conversation with Jason and Simon, when we went out for Chinese food before we went to go see Endgame. But the thing was, the conversation was really sort of, personal and vulnerable. And the big thing for me is I'm actually finding this to be a bit of an issue. Not in a huge way, but I don't have a problem talking about myself. I mean, clearly, and I don't mean that in a narcissistic way. I don't mind sharing vulnerabilities and sensitive stuff. Like, I like being honest with you guys, and I like having conversations and telling you about, stuff that it's embarrassing or whatever, but it's because I'm trying to just, if anything, just be like, look, I'm human. I make mistakes. I fuck up and I'm still struggling and Pete Holmes said in a funny enough an episode of Hot Ones where he's like, we're all just tripping and getting back up and tripping and getting back up and talking about it and hopefully laughing about it and trying to be better people. Well, that's what I hope to encourage and to promote when I'm doing this podcast is like, I'm willing to share like the stupid shit that I do and the dumb things that I say and all the efforts that I put out to try to be a better person. But, I have a lot of interactions with people that I don't know if they're okay with me talking about the conversations that we had. You know, comics is one thing. That's why I like the bonus episodes, because a lot of comics are cool with just talking and being open books. But I have people in my life that I care about very, very much. Lots of them too, not just one or two that I'm, you know, that these people all listen to the podcast too. So I'm not trying to make anybody think I'm talking specifically about them, but just in general, I don't know if it's okay to talk about certain things. And the last thing that I would ever dream of doing is, you know, airing something of someone else's and having them be upset. But the problematic thing about that is that, you know, it takes away from my being able to share what's going on with me, because I find that in a lot of these conversations, I learn things and I adapt new perspectives and things like that, because I spend time with people who I respect and admire and trust. So it's kind of like when I'm having these deep conversations, it's nice to be able to be like, oh, wow, that's really insightful, and then try to share it. But to share something small with no context or whatever, it's tough. So I'm trying to find a way to be able to share more with you guys, without sort of breaching anybody's trust or making anyone uncomfortable. Because it's really, at the end of the day, I really don't want to do that to anybody else. I love and respect the people in my life. I just want to be able to talk shit about them on my podcast. All right. Is it that fucking wrong? Anyways, so yeah. And then, do I prepare a script? No. And how can someone maintain the flow through the podcast? Really, I would suggest, you know, not being able to do it myself. It's very nice of you to ask me, but I don't know where you got the impression that I'm able to maintain flow, because I'm not. I think of a topic, I talk about it because I'm staring at a wall and I don't know if anybody gives a shit, right? There's no body language to read. When I do stand up, I'm able to look at the crowd and I can see, you can see and hear in stand up, right? So if I'm talking and I can, you know, a lot of the crowd is just black, I can't see them. But if I can hear chattering tables, then I know they're not interested. And the people that I can see, if I'm looking at them and they look bored, you know, I'm going to know that's feedback to me to go, okay, nobody gives a fuck about what you're talking about. Move on. The issue here is that I tell stories and things like that to the fucking wall. I have no idea how much of it is compelling. There's times where I lose interest in what I'm saying. And I think to myself, well, if I'm losing interest, the audience probably lost interest much longer ago. But then I'll have people tell me, hey, that story that you told about blah, 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 I really like that. That was my favorite part of the episode. I'm like, all right, because I thought that was the least interesting. So you're almost like, try to stay on point, try not to get too scatterbrained like I do, and kind of wait for the feedback. You know, the numbers sort of tell you if people are interested or not, but, you know, throw it out there. Just know what you want to talk about. If you're doing a sports podcast, make sure that, yeah, have your notes, talk about what sport it is you're going to talk about, what sports you're going to talk about, have the correct information. You know what I mean? Mine's supposed to be a comedy podcast, a get to know me podcast. So sometimes I feel funny, you know, and it's usually when I'm waking up and doing this earlier in the day. But this week, man, am I beat, guys. Man, am I beat. My eyes are so heavy. I cannot wait to just go to sleep. So I don't know, dude, if you want to write back and let me know what you're planning to do your podcast about, I mean, I'll give you tips. As a matter of fact, it would be really fun if the listeners, the onesies, would also maybe give you some feedback. You know, maybe you write in and tell us what the podcast is going to be about. And then let's see if the onesies will fucking give some feedback, because I'd love to know what it is about this. Like, it's funny that your feedback is like, it sounds like I've given you the impression that I prepare a script, in which case, man, would that be a wasted amount of time. Like, I just start writing the same sentences over and over again when I'm talking in circles, and then maintaining flow. I'm like, I don't feel like I give the impression of any of those things. I just talk. I look at my notes. If I've talked and I have nothing else to say about the notes that I've made, then I just move on to the next section of the podcast, you know? So I hope that clears up for you. If you're looking to start a podcast, I would say I'll give you the same advice that was given to me. All right. By the one and only Paul Verzi, who I'm going to New York to see again. You know, just another little plug for Paul, is to be consistent Okay. So if you're going to do a podcast while you're still figuring out your format and what you want to talk about and everything like that, just make sure it gets out on time. All right. That's what they said. The most important thing is just be on time. Don't come out on a Monday and then come out on a Thursday, then come out on a Tuesday, then next time it's Friday. Like, be consistent when you come out. Your audience is looking for your podcast, so make sure it's there for them when you want it. That's why it was so important for me to get the podcast out every single week on time. And also I would say do your best to have good audio. Last week's episode was a little crazy. And in fact, you know what? I don't think I've got episodes on YouTube that are much further than you're going to be on YouTube. Oh, Jesus. This is really funny, actually. This is becoming very, very funny to me very quickly. I told you to watch. I sent you an email back saying I would respond to your question. Okay, so here you go, Ones. Here's a funny thing. I sent an email back to you to say I would read your question on episode 104 and answer it on YouTube, because of the fact that YouTube doesn't track, listens. They don't track listens and downloads in a way that I can show clients. You know what I mean? Their numbers are different, views and shit like that. And you can't see how long someone viewed for and how many streams versus downloads and all that stuff. And then YouTube is a giant pain in the ass with the music thing too. Like YouTube it's just a pain in my ass. But I haven't posted videos in forever on YouTube. I think I'm like at episode 40 something, if anything, on YouTube, and we're at episode 104. So there's a good chance if this guy's waiting for the next episode to come out on YouTube, it's going to be a long fucking time before I just sit down and bang out all those episodes one after the other, putting them on YouTube. So I just realized you may never get the answers to your questions, but for fun, Onesies, why don't we write in some suggestions for this guy? What do you guys think would make for him to have a better podcast to maintain flow, if you will? All right. That's the podcast, guys. I hope it was a nice little waste of your time. I hope you enjoyed the small little banter. I'm looking forward to having some really fun stories for you guys. Honestly, I'm looking forward to it. There's been so much headache with, finding a replacement for Simon, then Simon's replacement canceling, and then Simon deciding he's doing it again. And all of this LCBO shit to literally the point where 7, 8 o'clock, I'm still doing reports, packing shit up. I haven't packed my stuff at all, just to get this thing out of the way so that I can leave at the crack of dawn and do this activation. This trip. Yeah, there you go. See, I'm still in work mode. I'm just, I'm looking forward to the trip. I just haven't had an opportunity to actually be excited for it. So I think that having this podcast done, it's funny. It didn't even occur to me till today that, you need to record the podcast today because you're gone from tomorrow morning right to the point that this thing has to come out. So, yeah, it's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of stress. There's been a whole lot of excitement. And like I said, I haven't got a single thing planned for our Tuesday in New York because I haven't had a chance to think about it. So fun stories are coming your way. Next week's episode 105 will make the 2-year anniversary mark of the One Man Podcast. I'll be talking about New York City. New York, New York. It's a hell of a town. And how Paul Verzi's 400th episode of the podcast went. All sorts of fun stuff to talk to you guys about next week. In the meantime, I hope you guys have a great time. I will chat with you soon.